Shalom, peace and blessings. Welcome to the Fourth Angels Learning Center. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Jadiel. Today's class is going to be on the second death. What in the world is the second death? I think this is very important because sometimes we lose sight of what does the reality of something means rather than the symbolic reference. So if something is referenced with a symbolic symbol or symbolic word, such as like beasts rising out of the sea and things like that along that nature, sometimes people get confused as to what should I interpret it or should I allow it for that to be the literal understanding of it. So the second death, we're going to look at those verses pertaining to the second death. We're going to look at what's thrown into the second death. Now, we did a study before this called the second coming, showing the nature of the second coming. And I think that this is very important to understand the second death. Now, the second death happens after the 1,000 years, which we're going to cover in this particular video. We're going to look at the 1,000 years, and then we're going to look at what leads to the second death. But if you have not checked the video pertaining to, I would say pertaining to the second coming, please go back and check that out first. That, in a sense, would be part one of the understanding the sequence of the last moments before the restoration. So let's go right into it. We're going to start in Revelation, where the word is located as far as second death is concerned. We're going to take a look at the only time that it mentions 1,000 years, by the way, and I want to emphasize on that. Because there's so much doctrines created on the millennial reign because of one aspect of where it's located. So Revelation chapter 2, looking at verse 11, it says, "He that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches. He that overcomes shall not be hurt by the second death." So second death is something that has nothing to do with the righteous. It has nothing to do with the righteous. It has only to do with the wicked, those who do not overcome. Okay? I think that's simple enough. Let's go to Revelation chapter 20. We're going to look at, well, I'm thinking we should go through this whole sequence. What we did was we talked about the second coming and how when Messiah comes, there's two things that comes to this earth. You have the wrath of the Father, which is understood to be the 7 last plagues. And then you have the wrath of the Lamb, which he makes repayment to the wicked at his second coming. Now, this is also when there's the resurrection, the first resurrection of the righteous. So when there's a resurrection of the righteous, there's a destruction of the wicked. Go back and check out that video and you'll see. This is how the 1,000 years begins. It begins with the resurrection of the righteous, the transforming of the righteous from mortal to immortal, and then it goes into the destruction of the wicked, and then the 1,000 years starts. Okay, so this is how we need to understand the 1,000 years and what these other verses is talking about. These other verses that seem to be too, I believe that people think that these other verses are too outlandish for them to even occur. Looking at our current state, looking at the current state of this world, many people are kind of, they do not believe that the things that he said will happen before his coming will actually happen before his coming, such as, Yah's people actually rising up and, teaching the whole world and all of these different things. They believe that this is only going to happen after Messiah comes back. So this is why the idea of the millennial reign comes about, because they know that the 1,000 years are going to start when Messiah comes back. But because of all these crazy, beautiful scenarios that needs to occur, they think that these things can only occur during the time Messiah is here. And when you go back and look at the study, you'll see that is not possible for nations to be alive at that time. So let's take a look let's go through Revelation chapter 20 to look at the sequence. So at the end of the video, we come to the resurrection of the righteous and the destruction of the wicked, and then the 1,000 years commence. But now we're going to see what he's doing to the enemy. Now look what it says. I saw an angel come down from heaven, having a key to the bottomless pit, a great chain in his hand. He laid hold of the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil, Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. Right? There's the millennial. 1,000 years, the dragon is bound, the righteous is raised, and the wicked is destroyed. Verse 3. He cast Satan into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him that he should not deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little season. Now, this verse here gives people the impression that the nations are there and he won't deceive them. Now, this is not the understanding that we should perceive, especially since we broke down the second coming already. It should be, he will not deceive anyone, any nation anymore. He is unable to deceive anyone until the 1,000 years is fulfilled. It has nothing to do with whether or not the wicked nations are alive or dead. It just means that Satan won't be able to do anything, whether they're alive or dead is not located in this verse. But we're gonna see in a second. Verse 4, I saw thrones, and they that sat upon them, the judgment was given unto them, and I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahushua and for the word of Elohim, which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither received the mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Messiah for 1,000 years. So at the same time that the 1,000 years, the Messiah, that the enemy is locked up, won't deceive nobody else. The righteous is reigning with Messiah for the 1,000 years. But what about the rest of the people who were destroyed at the Messiah's coming? It says here, the rest of the dead did not live again until after the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. This is very important because the first resurrection is the only resurrection that would allow you to escape the power of the second death. Look at verse 6. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On them, the second death does not have any power, but they shall be priests and of Elohim and of Messiah, and shall reign with him for 1,000 years. Constantly mentioning these 1,000 years. But guess what? There is no one else but Yah and his people, righteous people, dwelling together. Now, when the 1,000 years is over, Satan is loosed out of his prison and shall go out and deceive the nations which is on the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, which is a term referring to the four corners of the earth, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is of the sand of the sea. So now when Satan is loose, now he goes to the four corners of the earth to gather nations, the nations. Now, where are these nations from? Where are these nations from? And we're going to talk about this in a second. It says these people, after Satan rises up and he gathers these people, it says that they went and from the whole earth, and they surrounded the camp where the holy ones were and the beloved city, and fire came down from Elohim and devoured them. So fire came down from Elohim as they surrounded, attempting to take the city. Fire came down, and Yah himself protected his people from this massive attempt to take over. And it says, and the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire, brimstone. Now remember, it says that fire came down from Elohim, from heaven, with Satan and the nations there. Now it's referring to a lake of fire. We're going to talk about that in a second. The devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. Okay. Now we know what the term forever means according to Ecclesiastes. Let's just look at that real quick before we move forward, just so that way that's not on the mind, right? Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 14 tells us that forever is not an aspect of something that's eternal, but something that Yah does that nobody can change except for him. It says, I know that whatsoever Elohim does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken from it. Elohim does it. that men should fear before him, meaning Elohim does it. Nobody can change what he does. Only he can stop what he does. Okay, only he can stop what he does, but nobody else can. So this is what it means by them being tormented forever. And he's talking about the beast, the false prophet. Within the prophecy studies that we've done, we know that the beast is an organization as well as the false prophet. We know that the beast rises out of the sea, and the false prophet is the beast that rises out of the earth, that promotes, that it encourages everyone to follow after the beast. This is what a prophet does, and this is what a false prophet does as well. It encourages everyone to follow after the wrong individual. And this is what the beast rising out of the earth did in Revelation chapter 13, but that's another study, right? So they went into this place called the lake of fire, which we know, according to verse 9, the sequence happened when the fire came down from Yah out of heaven and it devoured them. Devouring something means that it consumed them. Now, of course, the punishment is according to their work, so we don't know how long it took for the final, completing of the devouring took place. In the second coming study, we did mention those verses in the scriptures talking about how the wicked were devoured. Now, let's go and see about this judgment. Now, remember, it has no mention of any second resurrection. Let's look at this. This is what's going on during the time that Satan is loosed. This is where all of those nations that were destroyed at the coming of Messiah, this is where they come into play. It says, and I saw the great white throne, him that sat on it from the face of the earth, and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. I saw the dead, small and great, stand before Elohim, and the books were open, and another book was open, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. The ocean gave up the dead which were in it. Death and hell delivered up, or death and the grave. I want to make that clear. Death and the grave, any type of death and every grave delivered up the dead, meaning that this is the description of a resurrection. And they were judged every man according to their works. And then look what it says. Death and the grave was cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. Whosoever is not found in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. Okay? So now let's analyze this. Is death and the grave an actual thing that can be thrown into the lake of fire? No. Death and the grave are concepts of things that restrict life. It's contrary to life, okay? It's contrary to a connection with Yah. It's contrary to immortality, all of those things. So when it says that death and the grave is being thrown into the lake of fire, this is the second death. It simply means that the second death is an eradication of existence. There will be no more death and there will be no more grave. And whosoever is not found in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire, and they will be no more as well. This is what lake of fire is referencing. Lake of fire is a figure of speech referring to eradication, complete eradication after you are punished according to your works, which it says clearly here in verse 13, they were judged every man according to their works. Now, those of us who looked at the study, second coming, we saw that Messiah comes. He raises the righteous. He gives them immortality in order for them to be able to see him as he is, which is in full majesty. We also saw that his full majesty destroys the wicked because he said he's coming to take vengeance and trouble and punish those who troubled Israel. So he's going to punish the people who brought the time of trouble on the people of Yah. After they are destroyed, as well as the earth feeling a destruction of his presence, the mountains being moved, all of this type of stuff, elements being on fire. Go back and check out that video if you have not. But if you have, you see the sequence. Messiah comes, resurrects his people, destroys the wicked. Earth is completely in turmoil and destroyed. Satan is now placed in a place where he cannot do anything because there's nothing to do. But he is stuck. Wherever he is stuck. So Yah's people is with the Messiah, reigning as kings and priests. After the 1,000 years, there's a resurrection of the wicked, and then there's a Satan deceives the wicked, the nations, to take the city When they attempt to take the city, fire comes down from Yah and it devours them according to their works. And the idea of a lake of fire is now understood, that they are now consumed, and that's what it means by thrown into the lake of fire. They no longer exist. Just like death and the grave were thrown into the lake of fire, they are thrown into the lake of fire, meaning that they no longer exist. That's what the lake of fire is a reference to. And the lake of fire is the second death. Okay, the lake of fire is the second death. This is what it says. So let's go back to these verses just to correlate these things. So it says, death and hell was cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. The lake of fire is the second death. This description here is a description of what occurred at the end of the 1,000 years. The wicked was raised, because remember, the righteous is raised at the second coming of Messiah. The righteous is raised up at the coming of Messiah. This is called the first resurrection. Why is it referred to the first resurrection and it mentions the second death? Because the second resurrection is only for those who are destroyed. And let me point that out. In the prophet Daniel, as well as what the Messiah's own words has declared. Let's look at this. Daniel chapter 12. It makes it very clear in verse 2. It says, many of them shall sleep in the dust of the earth and shall awake, some to everlasting life and some to everlasting contempt. John chapter 5. Messiah makes it very clear. Messiah makes it very clear. Talking about at his coming, there is going to be a changing of life, immortal to immortality. It says, verily I say to you, he that hears my word and believes on them that sent me and shall have everlasting life and shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death to life. Now watch this. Verse 28 and 29. Look at what it says, guys. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming, in that which all that are in the grave shall hear his voice, and shall come forth. They that have done good unto the resurrection of life. This is the first resurrection he's talking about. The resurrection of life is the first resurrection. He says that the second death has no power. But who does the second death consume? It says, they that have done evil to the resurrection of damnation. The second resurrection is the resurrection of damnation, is what we saw, where all the wicked was raised up, and it made a reference, a symbolic reference of them being judged out of the books. Even though they're already judged, they're being shown the reason for their destruction. Now, after that, it says that Satan goes around and deceives them, and they try to take the city. Fire comes down and consumes them, and this is what is referred to as the lake of fire, which is the second death. Death and hell being eradicated, meaning there's no more death, there's no more grave, because there's no wicked person that exists to die at that point. This is the second death. So we saw that at the coming of Messiah, the wicked are destroyed. Okay? When the wicked are raised after the 1,000 years, there is nobody here at all for 1,000 years, except for the righteous who are reigning with Messiah. Okay? Now, many people say, how are they reigning with Messiah if there's no one to reign over? This idea is false. What we can see about reigning is possessing, having dominion. When we go back to Genesis, Adam had dominion over the whole earth. He reigned. Now, he didn't have a whole bunch of people that he reigned over, but he controlled and he had dominion over the earth. Same thing with Noah. After the flood, Noah reigned. The fear of him came upon every beast, every animal. He reigned and had dominion over the whole earth because he was reigning. He was the king. He was the one who was delegating. He was in control. So when Messiah and his people reign together, it doesn't mean that they're reigning over people and oppressing people. That shouldn't even come in the mind of a righteous king reigning. But reigning means that they possess dominion. They have their possession. They have the city. And then they're going to have a new heaven and a new earth, and they will possess it, and they will reign together, having dominion over what is good. This is what it means by reigning. So this is the second death. The second death, the lake of fire, are symbolic for complete eradication, elimination, removal. It does not exist anymore. The wicked does not exist. The devil does not exist. Death and the grave no longer exist. There will be no more death and there will be no more graves. Okay? So this is what Revelation is talking about, as well as and which correlates with the second coming. So if you combine this video with the second coming, you'll see and understand what the second resurrection, or also known as the second death, is pertaining to. And you can put those sequences together, and you can see clearly how things are going to be when Messiah comes back. As far as all those other verses, please send those verses to me, and I can clearly show you when those things will occur. If it's going to occur before the 1,000 years, before Messiah comes back, as well, or if it's going to occur afterwards. We can look at that now that we see the sequence. Now we can place these verses where they actually are located. Okay. This is very important because of these doctrines of the 1,000 years, everybody's going to have this another chance in some wilderness or whatever it may be. This is not the case. This is not the case. We do not have another 1,000 years to get anything straight. We have now. Today is the day of salvation. Tomorrow is not promised. We do not have another 1,000 years. So we better make sure we're utilizing the time now and not wasting time thinking that all we got to do is barely make it so that way Messiah could come and help us out. No, Messiah is coming with his majesty, with the glory of the Father and with all his angels. And if you're not changed in the twinkling of an eye into immortal to see him, you will be destroyed when you see him, because all eyes will see him, according to Revelation 1:7. All eyes shall see him. I hope that this makes sense. If you did not see the second coming video, there's probably ideas of things that have not really made sense. I would definitely recommend that you go look at that video before you look at this video. And I'm probably going to label it a little bit more clear so that way you can probably do so. I hope that this was clear. If there's any questions, any verses that you would like for me to comment on, please send those things. We would love to address any conflicting verses to make sure everything harmonizes the way that Yah's word should. So I hope that this was a blessing to you, and I hope you guys have a blessed day. Shalom, everyone. Shalom, shalom. Thank you guys for joining our study today. I hope that it was edifying. And if you want to support this ministry, you can support us on 4alc.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube page. Click the like button and the notification bell. I hope to see you guys on the next study. Shalom, guys.